I'm just going to begin by saying I'm going to completely speak from the heart on this video. Nothing is scripted. I have a few notes in my phone that I kind of wrote down to kind of keep me on track, but overall I just want to talk about how this game made me feel and how I believe that Resident Evil Requiem is a love letter to fans all across the world who, if you're a new fan, an old fan, this game has a little bit of something for everybody, and I believe they tried to do that in the past with 6, and it didn't work out so well. But this time around, I think it went a lot better. I think they learned from their mistakes, and this game honestly made me emotional at times. You know, being a fan from the first game, you know, basically from 1998, 99 is when I owned my first game, being Resident Evil 3. I grew up playing Resident Evil 1 and 2 at buddies' houses and elementary school, beginning of middle school. The expectations going into Requiem were huge for me because this was a dream game for me. Going back to Raccoon City 30 years later, basically, and not in a remake form, in an original form, a new game. With zombies back, with Leon back. I mean, the only thing else I could ask for would be Jill. I love Grace as a new character. And before I say too much, I just kind of wanted to start off with just explaining that I have been a fan from the beginning, and I'm speaking from the heart, and this game means a lot to me. And I can't wait to dive into it, so I'm not going to say anything else. We're just going to get right into it. We're going to jump right into the gameplay first, and I'm going to kind of break it down between the two characters. And before I even go any further, I just want to say yes, there will absolutely be spoilers in this video. If you do not want this game ruined, I suggest you go play it and then come back and watch this video. Or if you just don't care, that's even better. Welcome, stick around, and enjoy the video. Let's get into it and start with the gameplay. Let's talk about Grace first. Now, obviously, the game intends you to play in first-person perspective for Grace to kind of enhance those horror elements. I actually did play in first-person for the first 4 hours or so, and then I changed it to third-person because it was kind of messing with me a little bit, going back between first and third-person, and traditionally I like to play in third-person, so you can have your own thoughts and opinions on that. I started off on hardcore mode. I played about 4 hours in, got to the care center, and eventually kind of, I wasn't really like stuck, but I was having to like muscle my way through, and I know I could have done it because I've done it plenty of times before, but I just didn't want that experience for my first playthrough. So I started over on standard modern, and played it in third person, both perspectives, and I had a much better time. And the last thing I will say about the perspectives is I'm going to go back and play on hardcore mode for my second playthrough, and I'm going to play through Grace's section all in first person. I might even do Leon all in first person. That is the beauty of replaying these games. I like to leave something on the bone to go back to. So that's why it's almost better for me to start off on a standard or even casual, which I never hardly do. I think standard's a good, or normal is a perfect starting point, because you can always go back and increase the difficulty. That's the beauty of these games. You get better at it, you get faster, you increase the skill. She's a little more green. You know, she is in the FBI, but she is not an experienced combat veteran badass like Leon. So her gun is not as stable. If you play in third person, she actually stumbles when you're running a little bit more. So that is the downside, and it actually makes it a little bit harder if you play in third person from that aspect. She does not have the melee attacks like Leon does, but she does have a push function, which actually comes in handy because you can push a zombie down and then fire off some headshots, finish them off while they're on the ground, and move on. So it is pretty useful if you develop that skill. And she also has the ability to use blood to basically craft with her little, I don't know what it is, some kind of like transfusion stick type deal. You can either craft ammo from it or herbs, just upgrades. Like you can do like a lethal injection where it almost like can take out zombies or prevent zombies to turn into blister heads, which I thought was pretty sick. She can pick up knives and kind of use those as defense, but her main arsenal basically revolves around the handgun or the Requiem gun, which is like a powerful magnum type weapon, super gun that basically takes out most zombies in one shot and actually pierces through them, so you can take out multiple at a time or use it against the various stalkers in the game. That pretty much sums it up in terms of Grace, in terms of her movement and combat. Her sections are going to be a little more stealth oriented. You're not going to be taking out every zombie you encounter. The game is intended that way. You should be kind of bypassing things you don't really have to deal with and using zombies against each other. But overall, I like the aspects of Grace's gameplay, the tense horror sections, that classic kind of RE7, RE2 remake, RE1 remake vibe, very tense. Item management is key. So all those classic features are there, and I couldn't be any more for it, and I loved every moment of it. In terms of Leon, it's everything you have grown to expect from him. He is an absolute badass in this game and takes no shit, has no fear. He can still throw roundhouses even though he's nearly 50, which is pretty badass. He is a little bit slower in terms of movement, coming from like RE4. I think that's kind of peak Leon. This is older Leon, you know, he's going to be grunting and moaning as he jumps down from things. He's not as limber as he used to be, which I think is cool that they brought those kind of elements into it, into his actual gameplay too. You're still able to pull off all those signature moves. He's not really throwing suplexes anymore, but you know, he's got his hatchet now, which I think is a great addition and awesome. And an awesome tool to use in tight situations, because you have that parry aspect that carries over from RE4, which I love. You have the sharpening feature. It would basically go dull, you know, if you use it against chainsaws or other weapons like that, or attack an enemy with it, you have to sharpen it afterwards, so you can't just spam it. There is a little bit of thought that goes into it. Like I said, you can still stun the enemies, so you're basically aiming for the head or the knees and running up and trying to take them out with a roundhouse kick or with your hatchet. Finishing move, which is sick. He also has finishing moves you can do with the handgun, the shotgun, which I pulled off a number of times. You know, no one's really sure how to quite activate them in particularly. I think it's just a timing thing, honestly. I think if you go to shoot basically at the same time you would parry, it might activate it that way. I'm not 100% sure. I had to play around with it a little bit more. But overall, it switches to that action horror combat when you switch to Leon. There's a bit of a pressure that builds up with Grace and a release with Leon is the best way to describe it. I think they created an excellent balance between the two. Obviously, there are some sections that feel a little more drawn out on Grace's side just because you're moving around a little bit slower. You're having to be a little more methodical, and Leon's basically just running through shit. Not as many puzzles on the Leon side too. Most of the puzzles are on Grace's side. I forgot to mention that earlier. And I do love some of those puzzles in the early on game. Outside of Leon, there are, let's get into the zombies a little bit.
Well, that's my cardio for the week.
In terms of the enemy variety in this game, I thought it was excellent. Each one of these zombies has like their own personality, and they're still kind of taking on these tasks they were basically living out before they turned into a zombie. Like a chef is still, you know, chopping meat and trying to prepare meals and working in the kitchen. You have the bellman working with the lights and hitting the elevator buttons, and you know, you might have a maid still trying to clean the the mirrors in the bathroom, and you have zombies that hate noises. You have zombies that sing. They have personalities and identities, and I think it's so cool that they brought back an aspect from RE1 where they had crimson heads, where basically zombies, if you didn't burn them, they would come back to life later in the game, stronger and faster. Now we have blister heads, where basically the same thing. Those little sticks that I was talking about that Grace has that basically can eliminate enemies through stealth. It basically makes their heads explode when you stick this device in them. If you do that to the zombies on the ground, it will destroy them. Like their heads will burst, and basically prevent them from turning into a blister head. And it introduces this to you pretty, like, you know, a couple hours into the game. So you've laid down a lot of zombies, and the first time you're like, oh shit, I kind of messed up. You know, all these zombies are going to be blister heads when I come back through here with Leon now. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then lastly, before we move on from the gameplay, they do have an upgrade system, the antique coins, kind of like an RE7. And you access this in the parlor, and you can upgrade, you know, with the pouch that gives you more inventory slots. You have the steroid shots, you have stabilizers, you have the one that increases your blood capacity by like 50% or something like that. This feature is kind of cool, but the only thing about it is it's only in this first section of the care center. After that, it's kind of irrelevant for the rest of the game. So if you don't upgrade in the care center, it's kind of useless. And I think there's lots of things to do in the care center. It's kind of like the main hub, the RPD, the Spencer Mansion of this game. So going back on multiple playthroughs, I can't wait to kind of revisit that and just break that down a little bit more and discover all the little nooks and crannies, because I feel like there's a lot of things I kind of missed. But yeah, in terms of the upgrade system, that's what you have. And then Leon gets a bracelet with like a kill counter later in the game, and basically you get points for each kill you get, incentivizing you to take out as many enemies as possible, and you can upgrade through this like computer basically when you go to save the game. So that about does it for the gameplay. I thought it was excellent. All those aspects from like the RE4 remake carried over, and I just really appreciate it. It's crisp, it's clean, it's fun, it's tense, it's scary. It's everything I want in a Resident Evil game, and I loved it. Now I wanted to get into the actual sections between both characters. I figured we'd start off with Grace, because basically the first half of the game you play as Grace, and the second half you play as Leon. So let's just jump right into this sucker. Starting off in the hotel. This is a very tense section. A lot of it was shown in gameplay trailers, and I believe a demo was released to, you know, a select few before the game came out. And this is where the girl is introduced, the giant lady who is basically stalking you throughout this hotel. I thought the tension, the build-up, the lighting, the setting, the mood, the atmosphere, everything was perfect about this. Obviously, the same director as RE7 worked on this project, and you can feel it in these sections. I've never been a huge fan of the cat and mouse system, but this is a little more interactive right here. You're not necessarily just running and hiding. You're having to find puzzle pieces, work your way back, and her AI is pretty intelligent. She cuts you off. She makes you kind of think on your feet and backtrack. So I thought all of that was wonderfully done. Moving on to the care center. This is basically the entire game for Grace. This is her RPD, her Spencer Mansion. It's elaborate. It's well laid out. It is available to kind of go about it your own way to a degree. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, just going back and discovering more of the West Wing and the East Wing and the best way to go about it and all the hidden little nooks and crannies. I think there's just so much to uncover with this place and the isolation ward. But overall, I thought the aesthetic of it was beautiful. The layout was super fun. Each room, it was almost like this fun house you were going through. It's almost like what it felt like. Each room had like a different puzzle to solve with the interactions with the zombie. How to get past them. How to manage your inventory. The items you have available. Things were scarce. Things were tense. You have to be really diligent, methodical the way you think things through. And overall, I had a blast here. It felt like I was in there for a while, but honestly, I think on replays, now where you know how to go through it, I think it's going to be one of the most enjoyable sections of this game to go through each time I play it. So I absolutely loved the care center and thought they did an amazing job creating another set piece that'll be iconic for years to come on. And the voice actor for Grace just did an incredible job too, just really representing that fear she was going through and the tense moments in these sections. And after that, you kind of make your way through the isolation ward, the care center basement, and the courtyard, and then the arch, which is pretty straightforward. And that pretty much does it for Grace. The arc, I thought there was going to be a little more to it, kind of like the lab in RE2, but it's fine. I don't mind a little linear aspect to the end of the game. But either way, I thought they did an amazing job with Grace's sections. Just overall, on more playthroughs, I can't wait to kind of play around and see the perspective from first person all the way through, since I did play it on third person. See how some of those areas kind of come across, because it will kind of change the gameplay a little bit in terms of moving around and just how tense certain sections are. But overall, just as a character, I really like Grace, and that's not easy to do with me. I wasn't a huge fan of Rosemary and Ethan, so Grace, Alyssa, really like these characters, and obviously I know Alyssa thought they did a great job with Grace overall. She's a very likable character, and I hope that we see more of her in the future. Now we get to the big dog, Mr. Leon S. Mother effing Kennedy. Leon does have some kind of set pieces during Grace's section, but I'm mostly going to be talking about his time in the Raccoon City area, a little bit with the orphanage, and then the Ark, because that is the bulk of the Leon sections. Going into this, I was just ecstatic, counting the minutes to get to Raccoon City. I was trying to enjoy the other parts of the game, but I could not wait to get to the RPD. And then I finally got to Raccoon City. In terms of the aesthetic of it, it's everything has been just demolished. It's almost like, and I really noticed this what I'm about to say when I went into the STARS office in the RPD, but it's almost like looking at Raccoon City like post Titanic when it sunk. You've seen Titanic the movie and what it looks like there, and then you see footage of it now. That's what I felt like I was looking at with Raccoon City. I mean, Everything's missing like a roof. Everything's just like this gray, like ashy mess. And it's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing to look at, but the set pieces and the nostalgia they just took you through, seeing these locations. I mean, the oil tanker's still there. The police car is still there from when Leon wrecked it with Claire, and how this whole story began when the freaking truck driver's eating the cheeseburger and the crashes the 18-wheeler. It's still there.
Dude, there's the same oil tanker. I'm sorry, this is so fucking cool. Like, just being back here. Wow. Okay, I'm glad I went over there. So that's the same oil tanker from Resident Evil 2 that took out Claire and Leon's cop car. Is this it? I think this is their cop car right here. This is the cop car Leon was driving. And they get separated by this. Claire and Leon. Oh, this is so sick. I cannot believe I'm about to walk back into the RPD. After nearly 30 years. Wow. Yeah, it pretty much doesn't have a roof, but it's still here.
And then opening up the gate and Leon having the flashbacks with Marlon and just...
It's on you now.
seeing the East Wing and the West Wing and the zombie's still there with like missing his jaw, and just Chris's jacket and Star's office, Wesker's desk, and Jill's bayonet. I mean, it got me emotional seeing that stuff. You know, I've been a fan from the series since the beginning, and I don't know, I just never thought that we would actually go back and experience this. So it was so cool just to step back into that city as Leon, you know, go down those routes again, bring up those memories. And it's cool how they like actually had Leon reflect on it and think about it as he's going through. Like I said, it had me emotional, had me a little emotional. But let's talk about the Raccoon City sections a little bit. A lot of action here. There are some horror elements as you kind of go into the sewage and underground parking area. Those are the kind of the horror elements down there. But you are climbing towers, shooting lots of zombies. They're throwing bombs at you, so it kind of gets into that RE4, RE6 kind of action a little bit. Some of those sections I don't think will be my favorite to replay, but you know, each RE game kind of has those little sections, and I think this area did stretch on a tad long for me. I think it was also me just like chomping at the bit to get to the RPD, if I'm being honest with you. And then getting to the RPD, just opening those doors, hearing that music, the remakes version of it, just going down through the East Wing, the West Wing, exploring. It was everything to me. It was so much fun. And then they bring back freaking Mr. X and he's chasing you around. That was like the last thing I was anticipating. And of course, like the fight with him was actually pretty cool too. So overall, my experience in Raccoon City was a positive. Did stretch on a little too much. A little too many zombies shooting you with guns. That's where you start to lose me a little bit, and they crossed that line. They were starting to put a toe over it, and then They reeled it back in with the RPD. I loved this area, and it lived up to expectations. And it was just beautiful to see those locations again, because like I said, I never thought I'd get the chance to, so really enjoyed that. Outside of that, we have a short little sequence where you play as Emily in the orphanage. I think a lot of people are going to have mixed feelings on this section as well, just like they did in RE2. I don't have a problem with it. You know, it's kind of that cat and mouse, hide and seek type deal. And these things can see you in plain sight when you're under a table for some reason. While you're hiding, they can't see you. And then kind of the same thing as Grace, you get to the Ark, kind of get through it pretty quickly. And then you're fighting Dr. Gideon, and then we find out he is infected with the Nemesis virus, and it ends with the Nemesis fight. And there's some things you can do before that, and you can either choose the option to destroy Elvis or release it. If you destroy Elvis, Leon dies. That was heartbreaking to watch, and I don't want to talk about it. Or you can release Elvis and save Leon and have the happy ending. In terms of the final boss fight, that was kind of interesting, where it was almost the same boss fight as the Nemesis from RE3, but a slightly watered down version where you don't have to push into things. It was a little bit easier. But overall, I thought this game was incredible. I give it probably a 9 out of 10. It cracks into my top 10 RE games, which is not easy to do. I've been a fan from the beginning. The classics will never be replaced. But this one really tugged on my heartstrings. It really brought out some emotions I didn't think I'd be experiencing. And overall, was just a delight to play. So, I am very happy with RE9 and the direction that Capcom has gone with this series. It's so cool to see them still thriving and making these games 30 years later. Like, I've grown up with this franchise. I've become an old man with Leon. That's what I felt like playing this game. So tell me how you felt in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Subscribe if you want to. Thanks for hanging around and listening to me yap it up about RE. And that's all I got for you. I'll see you next time, my friends. Stay blessed.